And today we have three very great speakers. I mean, I'm so interested to hear what they're gonna say. I don't really know them. I know Makēda came a few times. So Sam Chua, he's new to the channel, and Sabine as well, they're new to the channel. So I'm so glad to see new members coming in, and I will keep a lookout for y'all when I see you on the screen, and I will reach out to so that you have a chance to also share your work with the channel. So, without further ado, I would like to hand it over to the speakers. So you guys fight among yourselves who to go first and so on. So pass the mic around. Okay. Go ahead. Sam, maybe you want to start before you get cut off. I'm so worried.
Okay, I just start alphabetic order, but sure. We'll do like highest risk of drop off first. So I'm Sam here. What's complicated? I'm based in Asia. I live in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, but I say based in Asia because I'm not in Malaysia half the time. Last year I was in Malaysia for less than 180 days, although I'm still paying Malaysian taxes just to keep it simple and consistent. I'm here partly in my capacity as the founding curator of this research and imagination collective that we have come to call Punk Studios. Punk Studios is interested in a solar punk that is grounded in both the capital SEA, standing for Southeast Asia, but also the lowercase SEA, i.e. the oceans and the sea that connect all of us. And we came to the notion of punk. I'm hearing a bit of echo and someone's, I don't know if it's, who has a speaker on, so it's, okay, that's better. Sorry. We came to the notion of punk in realizing that as I looked at a lot of Southeast Asian history, I realized that the most profound influence on the cultures, the life, the meaning of Southeast Asia actually came from the sea. The signature foods of Southeast Asia bring together ingredients from several continents. The peoples of Southeast Asia, many of came as washed up refugees from other places, my ancestors included. And so Southeast Asia has a history that, for all the recent history of nation states and ASEAN and all that kind of stuff, the deeper histories are actually very sea-shaped. And we thought that was interesting to center around. And we also realized that the emergent culture in Southeast Asia had a very, what we came to call a punk quality, right? The sea meant that people escaping from famines or wars or disasters in other places could come and start a new life, right? And I've said in an interview somewhere before that the most punk thing for me is actually like the seed that falls on the side of a cliff and still decides to grow anyway, right? Because it can, right? And I think for me, punk is not interested in being president, or punk is not political in the sense of trying to take over something or being on top. Punk is just kind of, you want to do it for its own sake because it can, right? It's a very amateur, for the love of it quality about punk that I think is exuberantly expressed in nature and ecology. So anyway, long discourse. So I'm here, I guess we are about a year and a half into our experiment as punk. It started off as just a one-off gathering, but people, I think, were quite energized by it. Some people actually chose to move back to Southeast Asia because they found a new, fresh lens of connecting with it. And so I guess, I tried many experiments, most of them never go anywhere. So when you find something that sticks, you try and at least surf the thing and see where it goes. And here we are a year and a half later. I'm currently in Shenzhen, between Hong Kong, where I just helped host the Design Thinkers Gathering Conference, and I'm flying back to Shanghai tomorrow, where Punk is currently hosting a month-long solar punk and artificial imagination lab, as part of a larger gathering of a global group of many young independent technology builders, so that are coming from all over the world to Shanghai for 1 month. So it's really kind of weird, what they call a pop-up city. And we had an opening for this sail lab last week, where we had people from Africa, South America, the US, Europe, and all that in one room, right? So it's kind of a weird thing. Obviously, it's a very interesting time in history where Chinese technology is maturing to a point where it's enabling lots of new possibilities. And the sail lab we're doing is about trying to figure out what are the most solar punk possibilities when you combine frontier, abundant Chinese tech like cheap robotics and cheap solar panels and cheap EVs with the diverse societies and needs across the global south. Right, so punk is about, solar punk isn't just generic universal for everybody. What works in Europe for solar punk, greenhouses, perhaps in other things, don't really work in the humidity and the harsh tropical climates and archipelagic nature of Southeast Asia. So like what does solar punk look like in there is a question that kind of was one of the impetus for us beginning this exploration. And CPunk is at its core research. I don't think we are going to be writing policy papers and stuff, at least in the near future, I think. But by searching for these things, we hope to find stories and imaginations that first motivate and inspire us. And if they do that, then maybe they also help inspire other people, whether they're technology builders or storytellers, or, I mean, I think so much of the world is searching for fresh ideas and stuff today. So we're, I guess, scratching our own itch, but maybe finding ways to explore that after. So that's kind of some of the backgrounds going on right now. I'm happy to share more, but there's also a lot of other people, and I'm quite happy to see so many diverse geographies and backgrounds on this call. I had the privilege of traveling to like all 5 continents last year for various things. Many of them connected to CPunk. So somehow this small experiment has turned into snowballed a little bit into these things. So yeah, it's kind of sometimes the danger with experiments is when they kind of don't fail right away, but succeed a little bit. So here I am. I'm very happy to share with you all and brief on this. And thanks, Vanessa, for convening this session.
Pass the microphone.
Sabine?
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah, oh great, because they are also constructing here at the neighbor's house, so I just turned on my headphones as well. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and it's wonderful to get to know this community a little bit more. I already wrote down some questions for you, Samuel, but maybe later. So I'm based in the Netherlands, and I had a future-based platform which was called Future Based, where we did experiments, workshops. We had gatherings, podcasts. It existed from 2015. Do I say that correctly? No, 2018 to 2025. And a few years ago, I started my PhD and I started developing more into philosophy. So I had to make the decision to let that platform go. But I have some experience with future practices in that perspective. What I'm doing now is I did a bachelor's and a master's in philosophy, and I focused on philosophy of imagination in science. And then I got to know someone who worked in space industry. I've been a philosopher in residence at the European Space Agency. It was not official. I was a guest. I still see it as I've been a guest there. I've granted the opportunity to work with this amazing team. And then after several months, I was like, I have now so much information on imagination in the being used in space practice. I want to organize this on an academic level. So I started a PhD on the epistemic role of imagination in space science, which basically means I'm interested in the knowledge value of imagination in space practices. I'm doing a bit unconventional research in perspective of philosophy, because I'm interviewing a lot of scientists, drinking a lot of coffee with a lot of amazing people. And I want to know how they use visualization, more specific visualization, so not just imagination, when it comes to decision making with limited data, also with very expensive experiments. You can't experiment that much with planning or scheduling where you want to land the new Mars rover, for example. So they have to use their imagination, visualization a lot. It's a very high interdisciplinary, very high pace environment. So I'm very interested how they use these narratives of imagination and visualization in the practices. I'm also interested in visualization when it comes to future, more future, so 50 years from now, and understanding how space science develops in 50 years from now. Therefore, I'm writing a paper on visualization and progress and how visualization is related to understanding. So here the epistemic part comes in. How and why do we use visualization in relation to understanding theories better, to understanding decision-making better, or worse? It could also be that there are pitfalls, of course. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. And let's see, is there anything that I skipped? Talking pretty quick. Also, yes, I wanted to stay, just to be clear, I want to stay away from imaginaries. So imaginaries is something from the social sciences, which is very much about cultural references, about, for example, how science fiction plays a role, how media plays a role in imagination. I'm interested, and it overlaps, of course. Sometimes a scientist says, when I'm researching dark matter, I make use of scientific illustrations to get a better idea of what I'm looking for. Sometimes I have scientists that who are very inspired when it comes to scientific or science fiction films. But I try to stay away from these cultural references. I really want to understand the processes of imagination, of how visualization works when it comes to understanding theories. So science fiction in the sense that it inspires or helps them, it's fine. But the imaginaries, I will leave that to the social scientists. Yeah, that's basically my research in very short.
So we have Makēda up next.
Makēda, yeah.
Makēda.
Thank you. I'm over here taking notes and just like my mind is expanding. So the processing time when I hear about all the cool things that you all are doing. Hello, my name's Makēda. I use she, her pronouns. I grew up on Diana land in Alaska, and right now I'm based in Berlin, Germany, and I'm wrapping up a degree in futures research. Fascinating. And also kind of some of the same stuff. That's kind of what I'm noticing. My background is in education. I studied at Stanford and I spent time in the classroom as a classroom teacher. I stepped out to pursue performance art while I was coaching teenagers and executives. And I think the thing that really struck me and part of what led me to working in futures was that I had one day where I had a session with a 6th grader and a C-suite executive, and it was the same conversation. It was the same challenges that they were having. And I was thinking, man, I wish that we were teaching our young folks how to navigate the future such that they don't have to live an entire professional experience and be asking themselves the same question, have the same conversation. So I would consider myself more of a futures literacy educator now, more than a coach, and that I feel like everyone's at this point trying to learn how to read what's happening and also be authors of a future that they actually want to live in. And right now I work mostly with educators, school leaders, developing adaptive leadership, building capacity for all the moving pieces, and just kind of playing with the uncertainty in a way that's not there's so many things that are happening that we don't necessarily have control over. And I'm thinking, just briefly, I'll share, yesterday I had a sandbox session. I like to call, I've moved away from workshops. I am trying to not perpetuate legacies of labor with the work, and I'm trying to move away from capitalism with the shop and the commerce. So I call these spaces sandbox sessions. We come together, and yesterday there's a number of 15 educators from around the US came together to role play a new scenario. And part of what I enjoy about the play that I invite people into is that I don't need to spend any more time thinking about the dystopian narratives. There's so much of that that's already present. And I also need to pull down the balloons and actually ground in reality. So there's this playing, this dance that needs to happen, I think, And so what I enjoyed was that we focused on like, what would a neighborhood community school look like? And starting from a scenario where we're taking different roles, taking different perspectives, and also taking deep breaths. So I'm going to invite us all to like take the deepest breath you've taken all day today. I know that I was like running from my language class. My program is in German. My Deutsch is so lala. Aber I learn new things. So yeah, I guess what I do is I build playgrounds for people. And the main one that I'm enjoying right now is called Flip. And it's kind of like flip the script. It's Futures Literacies, plural. It's not just one literacy. Futures Literacies Invitational Playground. And the idea is that we need to play instead of spend so much time trying to predict and like rest on some certainty. And so it's a 12-week cohort. And it's some people that are moving through the unknown, moving into the unknown. I'm layering Julia Cameron's Artist's Way with Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. And we're moving, hopefully we'll move away from such Western frames, I just really believe that there's another way to tell a story of transformation that we have to really embody. And we need to play, we need to make it fun, because it's so serious out there, what's happening. It's real, and there's a lot of weight to what's present, and there's another way that I think that we can navigate it. So I make tools, I make spaces for people to come play. There's a card deck coming out later this summer called the Black Menagerie, which is a futures archetype for thinking, how do we navigate what's surprising and difficult, what keeps getting ignored. And so there's a culturally relevant element to that tool that's coming out. But all of it, the playgrounds, the cohorts, I call them portals of possibility, really just trying to answer the question, how do we make meeting this moment more fun and sustainable, doing it in community and just navigating uncertainty when we're being honest and also not taking ourselves so seriously. And I need help with that myself, so I'm always inviting people to come play. Yeah.
Cool. So if you have any questions for our speakers, let's read from the chat. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. Is there a raising hand thing for? Yes, good. Okay, because I'm also not very good with Google Meet. I'm sorry, I have to apologize in advance. I don't use Google Meet for quite formal meeting like this. Usually it's just a chat between two persons. This first time I'm using this on a massive scale. It's good, like I say, learn new things, which is why I'm always moving, People will say like, why are you moving so much? Don't you feel tired or won't you want to settle down? And I don't know, maybe just feeling alive, being in different places, I guess. Or we have Bazir put up his hand. Come, Bazir, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Sam, I'm sorry I didn't recognize. I joined your lecture on solar punk that was sponsored by APF Brown Bag lecture series. So can we ask one question per presenter or just one question at a time and a round of questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Just ask whoever you want to ask.
Sure. So Sam, you have mentioned that the variances in temperature and climate requires different equipment. But as you remember in the beginning of the talk, I said we've experienced both the winter lulls and the summer spikes. So has that also come out, so that extreme sudden shocks and variables and that unpredictability? So you may have type A product that's supposed to work for you, but then your situations actually dictate type B or type C product. And Sabine, space junk, I know it's not fun stuff, but as a philosopher, but also you hold people to account, enforce rules and laws. So what kind of an environmental governance or environmental enforcement should there be in the outer space? Because it's getting nastier. And Makēda, I have the most fun question for you because you're doing very fun stuff, and I would have never imagined the similarity between, a primary school or a middle school student and an executive. So perhaps a middle school student is curious and challenging, and an executive is curious and challenging. So is the executive tapping into to their inner child, or is the inner child perhaps tapping into executive level skills that are somewhat lost in the educational system? Thank you.
I guess I'll just do a quick response. The answer is yes. Like, I think climate is not just the temperature per se, it's also the variability, right? I put an example in the Bay Area where people dress more in layers, because in the same day you can have all these things. And I guess fun story, like last year we actually, one of the Seapunk things we world built was actually imagining a future Southeast Asia where the weather has got so crazy variable, where you actually have 4 seasons in the same day. So there's snow on the paddy fields, right? And the way people adapt, is actually having to like find ways to like do really localized responses in all sorts of different ways. I could go more into that and show that, but like basically variability is a huge part of climate change, right? It's not just a general average temperature thing, it's actually more extreme situations, as we're all seeing in the news literally every month or week sometimes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, in relation to the question of space junk, I wish as philosophers we could hold people really accountable, but we can't. The only thing is that we can bring to the table the discussion around space junk. And I wrote an essay, or like a chapter of this, in the book Criminal Justice and Ethics in Outer Space. I will drop the link here. And it's in relation to, my chapter is about space junk in low orbit. And I connected to John Rawls. John Rawls had a thought experiment with the field of ignorance. And he basically says, if you don't know the outcome of a certain decision, where would you place yourself? So he uses that imagination. And I think it's very applicable when it comes to space junk. We don't know how it will impact us. We don't know how it will create problems. What we do know is that certain countries have more space junk out there than others and should bear more responsibility, in my humble opinion. So I address this in this chapter. So it's a thought experiment, uses the imagination to place yourself in a situation that is becoming more and more urgent, because the Kessler syndrome, where one little piece of tiny junk hits another and then it keeps hitting all other parts. It was a theoretical idea, but it becomes more and more into the realm of reality. And I can also send you, if you're interested, I can send you the chapter.
This is one of the reasons I enjoy coming to these spaces, because my resource list continuously grows, and I have a practice of planned procrastination, which is great, because then I just go into this long list of like topics that I would never have thought of. This is fascinating. So thank you for dropping that in the chat. And to your point about, or your question or comment about the teen and executives having similar experiences, for me, that moment was a very humbling moment, and also for me a signal that, I, as an educator, I went to this renowned school of education. I thought I was tech savvy until I wasn't, and I realized pretty quickly I need help. I need to get in the practice of saying I don't know. And it's wild how trust can be built when you're honest with people about where your growth edges are, and when one is able to lean into the fact that there are going to be new competencies that the world is going to ask for, and that the people that are closest to the future are often ones that societally we've been trained to kind of talk down to. So this brings in for me like design justice principles of, when you design for people that have been living and leading and learning from the margins, you tend to kind of consider the accommodations that might actually really support everybody else. And so I think about Riel Miller talks about like anticipation for emergence. So not anticipating what's coming so that you can prepare for it, but really developing the capacity to be present to what is unfolding and what do I know that I don't know. And kids know that there's a lot that adults think that they know. And then they watch adults make choices with voting or not voting or policies, and I really, it's important for me to stay grounded with young folks because they will tell me how they really feel. And so I think that's for me where the play lives, is that I was trained to be serious. I was trained to take things serious. You know, futures literacy, futures research, it is a field now. It is scientific now. We can measure it. And seriousness, I think, can put up walls and become a defense and a way of kind of trying to stay in control, trying to stay in charge. And what I invite for kids and adults both is something different for young people. It's take up more space, not just to solve problems that previous generations maybe created, but also be the author of something that's new and ask us questions. And I like to say, like, if it's not crunchy, then we're probably not chewing on it. And I think that what we're all sitting with is like, there's some grief work that needs to happen as we like hospice modernity. And there's also weirdly this playful, like, who knows? I don't know. So that's what I enjoy.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
while you're here, I think Rose has a question for you, Makēda and Sam. So she says, how do you make your work plural? Really call question for and from you class. Plurality? Yeah, that's what she's saying. I think she's asking 2%.
You can
Yourself.
go first, Makēda, since you're already up.
So I saw something in the chat. Hospicing modernity is not at all I like to borrow and I like to cite people. That is Vanessa Machado, I think. Otero, I believe.
Yes.
And there's also Outgrowing. There's a sequel that I'm listening to right now, which is, I will find that and drop it in the chat. Futures literacy. It's a playful way that I've been navigating, moving out of my head. Like cognitively, I can like see the trends. Cognitively, I can see things, or I can have ideas about what is coming. And I've been playing around with the ABCs for the future. I can drop it in the chat, but it starts with like how I feel. I feel scared. I feel unsure. I feel a certain way. There are behaviors. That's the B. There are things that I do or don't do. Sure, there's the cognitive, but there's also like a dialectical element to it, an experiential element, the fun. And then when I bring all of those pieces in, then I can actually generate something new. And so perspective taking is a huge thing. And then just moving through, we know what to do in theory about climate change, but there's something that gets in the way of that behavior shift, not only on an individual level, but also the behaviors of the people that are, at different levels. So how do I make it plural? Is I just make it up and then we play around with it. And it's very iterative. And it's been also really, really rich to see what people are looking forward to. So thanks for that question.
Let me echo what Makēda just said in making it up, but I want to add a new frame to that. In the sense that, so I want to share two small things I observed as I was listening to both Makēda and Sabine's introduction, right? The first is kind of like, I think we talk about futures literacy a lot, right? But as I think Sabine was talking about like visual and the imagination, I began to feel that like actually it's when we talk about the practice of seeing, right, or just like the sense of seeing, right, we don't really focus on what is seen, right? Like I don't talk about I'm seeing a wall in front of me, I'm seeing the screen in front of me and all of your faces, right? It's sight seeing is the practice of it, and yet we talk about futures as the objects that we're seeing instead of the futuring of actually seeing that future, right? And of course, those of us who've actually gone through future studies practices, right, we know this because like, you know, it's not about that one future that you predict, right? It's actually about the act of how do you practice that this capability, this cognitive capability of sorts that's, you know, augmented through all the research we do, but So it's a living, sensational perception kind of practice, right? So that's the first observation I made that stuck with me. The second one is that like fun is not an adjective describing a thing. Fun is an adverb describing how we act and do something, right? What does that mean? Like an adverb is like quickly, you run quickly, right? You don't quickly you don't quickly a book, right? So fun is a function of the perceiver, the experiencer. It's not inherent to the thing in itself. The same act of stepping on sand can be really fun for a kid, but not fun for somebody else. So fun is actually a function of the experiencer, which means that it has agency, right? Now, how does this connect to this question, right? I think the way we make word plural is by actually literally by going from the bottom experience up instead of from some centralized institutional process down, right? When it comes from the top down, it tends to become very like homogenized. It's kind of like collective. You put all this stuff into this giant stomach and then it gets collected, right? But I think literally you're making it up, right? And if you cannot start from like the grounding of each person's experiencing, each person's futuring in a present sensation, right? Like we have 5 senses, so the people who look at stuff tell us, but actually all the different languages we use, the lenses of stories, the imaginaries, like analogies from space and all these things actually give us different ways of perceiving, of experiencing, and therefore of imagining, right? That's this kind of thing that what we can experience kind of like shapes our futures code, or what we can then begin to anticipate. And so I think that's a very powerful connection between expanding our vocabulary of perceptions and experiencing, and therefore the kinds of anticipation and forecasting we can do. And I think I feel a lot of like both Sabine's work and Makēda's work kind of like is exploring this, in a way, expanding our cognitive repertoire of how we can pay attention in ways that actually give us tremendous agency. And the fact that fun is an adverb is actually very empowering. It means that anyone can make anything fun if you find the right frame for it in your own ongoing experience of it. I hope that answers the question, even in a quite circuitous way.
Okay, wonderful. So we got to I see 2 hands are up. First one, Romano, go ahead.
I love live conversations, especially when you're in the line to ask a question, because your question gets answered. Murphy's Law, as you're about to ask the question. So thanks, Sam, for that. But I was listening to Makēda specifically when you were talking about you don't do workshops, you do sandboxes, and you introduce play and you bring fun. And I went back to a time in Taiwan, actually working with Mei Song, with engineering students at National Taiwan University, doing futures and foresight work. And we asked a question afterwards, like an exit survey, to these undergraduate engineering students. And one of the big pieces of feedback we got was, these were terrible workshops or sandboxes or classes or whatever, because we didn't learn anything. It was too fun. That was these things that the students did. When we went back and engaged with them months later, we obviously found that the retention was really high. Why was the retention high? Because the workshops were too fun, right? But it brought up this idea of the cultural dimension of fun and imagination. And is it ever possible? And this is the question. I think it's great to have 3 very different representations of humanity in a call here with the 3 panelists. So diversity is great, and I love this spread. But we have Southeast Asia, America, and Europe, Netherlands, the coldest, rainiest place on earth. But how do you guys handle the adverb of fun? And Sam started to answer that question in your work, specifically as it relates to imagination, because fun can often be, yes, an asset, but also, at least at that initial stage, such a barrier to engaging with difficult concepts. And I don't mean difficult as in mechanically difficult. I mean difficult as in we have barriers to these concepts. So we make them difficult to ourselves. And so how do you manage how much fun you use in your work?
Or was this question for Makēda? And if in
all three, go for it.
Okay. Because Sam, I also wanted to respond to you. There's so much. There are so many hooks that I want to explain and talk about. But I will try to keep it short. So in relation to the fun and engineering, when it comes to space research, for example, but also when it comes to art students, because I forgot to mention, I'm a teacher at an art academy as well, where I teach product designers. And there is this sweet spot for me and for the students and the scientists that I talk with between having fun and feeling a certain kind of pressure to go through that learning curve. Because learning and really getting to your creative ideas into something tangible, materialize your ideas, materialize your visualization of the future, whatever, it takes a certain kind of going through a dip and then creating an idea. You all kind of know it's also this diamond shape. You have all these ideas and then you have to pressure something through and then the idea comes out into materialization, hopefully. And I'm very interested in imagination as an ability and in this epistemic sweet spot where the fun merges, the fantasy, if you will, merges with the reality. And this sounds maybe a bit strange, but hierarchy, how a team is managed, how a workshop is managed, it plays a very, very important role. The teams that I was a fly on the wall, they had this very open structure where bachelor students, master students, postdocs and professors all were interacting with each other. There was no hierarchy. There were all ideas. And in the end, the manager came in with the reality bed, and he literally called it the reality bed because then something had to come out of this work session. Then they had to choose, make a decision, create this narrative. This would be the most optimal decision for this problem. So there is a certain amount of fun. There is a certain amount of play. But when you have to turn it into something tangible, at one point there's this sweet spot between making choices and the fun. There has to be some kind of urgency. And I would love to write a methodology. So this is something I would love to work on in my PhD as well. Yes.
If I may riff and build on that, I hadn't thought about this before this conversation came up. So this is another great thing about live conversations. But I think like overly focusing on fun as a single dimension, I think like there's a disservice to the space because I think it's very multi-dimensional space, right? Every word we use, like fun, is one label on like this kind of like very multi-dimensional space of like emotion, like perception, and all those things. And I think maybe the intuition I carry as a facilitator and kind of like, I guess, like space designer, if you like, space not in strictly physical, but a space like hosting a session like this is because of everything we talk about has history, has baggage, has associations. We come to think of certain topics as very fun and very like fun can be useful, but it can also be like carry a sense of like, like not useful, flippant, like, like playful, unserious. Other topics carry a baggage of like being very anxiety inducing, overwhelming, serious, only for grown-ups, and there's all these other things that these carry. I think the intuition I carry is like, how do you almost suspend or subvert or counterbalance the baggage that people bring to these things? Because once you create a space in which they can interact with something with a different kind of like almost like weight on their shoulders, different gravity in the room, right? Then they can find different perspectives around it, right? Like if you change the gravity in a room, people can dance around a subject in a very different way. And so I think a lot of the work that I think we've been subconsciously doing with C-Punk is like we do a play shop because a play shop can talk about serious topics with a lightness that other things cannot. And the point itself is not fun in a single dimensional way, although fun, of course, is fun, right? But the fun gives us a freedom of perspective and a freedom of encounter and a freedom of exploration. And I think explaining Sabine's work, like imagination, right? I think it gives us ways to visualize and to comprehend that that go beyond what how we normally encounter something, right? So in like, there's one of my friends has this thing about like animals tend to like cock their head when they're confused and stuff, right? And like there's this kind of micro way of like finding a different perspective. And I think, like exploring that, right? Sometimes making things that I usually thought of as fun unfun actually helps people to like consider it in a different way, right? I mean, like games is having this whole movement over the past 10 years about take this seriously, they're serious games. Games can do real work, right? Which people who have played and like done a lot of games know, but that's important because like every label carries its baggage. And I think finding ways to like counterweight and suspend that kind of the physics of a space in the cognitive, imaginative realm, actually, I think is maybe one way to explore it.
Okay, I think Elaine, your turn.
Thank you. So I have two things. The first is for Sabine. Is a little, very quick story. The path to spaceflight started in, I'm sure you know, in testing balloons into the stratosphere in the South Dakota, and the switch from, I think it was hydrogen to helium balloons. There was a fire. The balloon broke as it kind of headed toward the stratosphere. The crew escaped, and they threw. And actually, the engineer of one of those flights, the National Geographic reporter, took the spectrometer from the bubble and landed with it. That guy ended up in the very small Swiss mountain village that I live in, and gifted the spectrometer, this incredible piece of history, to the guy who runs the optician in the village. If you bear in mind, there's only 2 cafes and a supermarket, well, a tiny supermarket. And it's just stuck on the wall by the door. And it's this sort of mind-blowing element of the past. The guy, the National Geographic guy, retired here, not even to my village, but an even smaller hamlet just up the mountain. And so there's something about that space junk, which is, I wonder where we might be in the futures with that space junk, which is not junk, but actually might be the sort of analog version of taking us forward. But if you ever want a picture of it, I'm happy to take a picture of this letter.
Yes, please.
I will send it to you. It blows my mind every time I get my eyes checked. The second is kind of continuing that theme of if the three of you take your work, which in my futures work, this is how I see it. I do a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship stuff, but you have created, your work in itself is a signal of change, kind of sending these ripples out across futures. And so if we kind of surround ourselves in a sort of Star Wars resistance lens, how might your collective or individual signals of change shape transformative futures, especially in reaction to the neoliberal discourse that we're living in? Just to throw a few big words out there in the sort of 8 minutes we've got left. But and I'd be really interested, and also I just think it's it's really important that we ground ourselves but think forward in those ways too.
I'll go first quickly, in a way that connects also to, like, I think a question that came up earlier around, like, I guess, like money and like how these things are business plans and all that kind of stuff. CPUNK doesn't really have a business plan so far, at least for the collective layer of stuff. Like, it's been very art project so far, and I think that punk spirit, like, I guess it's our kind of like subversion of like this neoliberalism. But I think also it's I mean, many of us here are professional futures practitioners, right? And I think part of that falls into kind of like the mode of the consultant or the pay by the hour practitioner kind of thing. And like, I mean, many of us in the CPUNK community like do this on the side. I have my own kind of like consulting practice and stuff that like some years does more and less. I guess the that has freed CPunk to kind of be a more space like and our strategy has been we don't have money to like pay people full time to like do stuff, right? Or even to like fund a fellowship for a few months for people. So our model's been like pop-ups, right? We'll all go for a holiday somewhere in like a nice cheap place, and in that week we get to like work or engage with these topics in some sort of way. In that, could there be different kinds of models going forward? Perhaps, right? But I think there's I kind of like the amateur like punkness of kind of like it is its own reward kind of spirit. Like it's also a great filter because it filters out people who are just there for the aura or whatever, right? And sometimes my experience with facilitating spaces is like keeping the wrong people out is actually as important as getting the right people in. So I mean, I'm sure all of you are invited and are nice people, so you're all welcome to come. But like typically the people who come for the aura like often like inhibit other people from being free participants in the space. Okay. Hope that responds somewhat to the question.
I'm gonna pop in. I'm thinking about how when I think about embodied futures, play is resistance for me, like rest is resistance for me. In my different positionalities, that's not how I've been. That's not what I inherited as a myth. And so I think something that I was thinking about briefly to the question before about how do you balance play and like learning. There's learning science developmentally about what happens in the adult brain, and that's different than what happens in the still forming prefrontal cortex of a teenager. And also we're all learning new things. And I think that when I think about how do we bring this forth, how do we bring these practices and these ways of being, there's an element of like attunement to being present what's actually in the room. So when I'm facilitating, I'm going to facilitate differently if I'm in the Bronx than if I'm in a German international school than if I'm in a room with UNESCO sustainability leaders. But I can still bring the same game. And that's where I'm not really super concerned around like AI, artificial intelligence, large language models, taking necessarily my role. There will be, for instance, I work in a school system. I still need to work in capitalism. I still am in the system. And there's something that I don't believe can be taken from me, my ancestral intelligence, my associative intelligence. These are the kinds of wisdom and knowledge that live in the body and story and play. And that collective intelligence that's cultivated in a room that knows how to read, like that is able to sit with a crunchiness, read a room, hold contradiction, sit with not knowing. AI can be really good at prediction, but it may not necessarily be capable at this moment of presence and embodied experiential learning. And so when I think about how do we live beyond the neoliberal, all of the frames, all of these different things, there's a part of me that's like, I guess we'll find out. I guess we'll find out how that works tonight. For me, it's very much so in the body of being able to be in the room, in all of those different rooms, and invite in play, and also invite in the complexity without getting overwhelmed and getting stuck and needing to be right and needing to prove to somebody that there is an outcome. People will feel a shift. And I think when I think about time horizons, there's an element that is kind of unseen for me, and that there's a little bit of faith. People have different feelings about that, but yeah, there's an embodied element. There's an understanding for me, at least in some of my belief systems that are always changing, also always kind of tweaking that the presence and the attunement to like the human and our relationships to the large language models and all of the earth magic that allowed us all to be here. Like I do a land acknowledgement when I work with people, because it's we can, I think, forget like this is star stuff that we're talking with earth minerals and different things. So
Okay, the next hand up is Wen Yang. Would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure. Thank you. Hello. My question is for Sabine, and I think if I understand you right, you mentioned you kind of get involved with this research group and for a while, and as your idea developed, you went into this full PhD program. So I'm kind of curious, how did you get into that place? Because I'm also kind of interested in getting into like future study like academically, but I kind of don't want to make the decision and start applying, commit like 4 or 5 years before I kind of have like a taste of what actually researchers they do day to day. So just wondering if you could share a bit more about that. Thank you.
Sure, of course. I think in that way I'm a bit unconventional PhD candidate because I'm external. So what I did, I started a podcast like almost every millennial, I think. And it was about scientific imagination, and I interviewed a few people, and then one of them asked me, what would you like to do? I mentioned I'm a space enthusiast, so I want to do space. And he said, oh, I'm going to a conference. I joined him to the conference. That was how I ended up as a philosopher in residence. So it was just something that was fun, right? Something that was granted to me. And then at one point I wanted to organize my thoughts on an academic level, but I never had the aspiration to do really a PhD because I wanted to do a PhD. I just had the information and the enthusiasm. So what I did is I applied with my idea to a university and I got accepted. But this means I do not get paid for my PhD. And this is a privilege that I can do this. I work full time next to my PhD. And still it's a privilege because I think for academic work in base you should be paid, but I don't want to be part of the academic research group. I like this outsider view. So what I want to I say to you is do your research. I would gladly talk to you about academic structures, about what you can try to test out if this academic PhD life is something that you aspire, because doing it for the PhD is not the way to go. It's because I think, this is my take, right? To do it with your internal motivation.
Yeah.
So I'm more than happy to talk to you about that.
Yeah, I think the external approach actually sounds like really fascinating and maybe like even like a better fit for me too. I'm also doing a startup and also have consulting, but you know, some aspect of my interest, I want to do it like with the rigor of academic level, but maybe not, you know, full. I would love to explore that. That's definitely like quite eye-opening and mind-opening. Thank you.
Send me an email.
I think we have a question from Daniel here. He said, I'm interested in how all of the speakers have developed their business plans or revenue streams in an emerging field of practice. Daniel, you're here. Would you like to ask the question rather than me asking on your behalf?
Thanks, Anissa.
Sorry.
You answered the question very well, but I will add my voice into the chat. It's been great listening along this morning, and I'm finding it really inspiring because I'm asking the question for myself over the next couple of years of like, what does it mean to be a futurist, or like, how would I want to be a futurist? So that's why I'm interested in like the nuts and bolts, but because that's the reality, right? Or rather, that's how you make change and make transition, is like, okay, here's what we desire in the future. What steps now can be made in the present to get there? So thank you so much.
Can I jump in briefly? Because that's part of what this cohort that I'm playing with New Futures is. The artifact for the 12 weeks is a 2032 job description. And it's part of what came up actually yesterday in one of the sessions was like, oof, like this is great reflective work. And also, how does this actually tangibly work? Because right now I'm working in tech and I need to pay bills, and I live in capitalism, I live in these systems. And so there's this kind of like, oh, what do? I don't want to feed the machine, but I'm a part of the machine. And part of what we kind of talked about was thinking about the time horizon. And also one of the activities that we did was kind of thinking about what you would want to do on a Tuesday. Like if and when you were to zoom forward, what would your Tuesday actually look like? And creating like best case scenario, I like to play with like tiers. There's good, better, best. Like best case scenario is that there's this world that's like, right, you have in your mind, and the reality is that is not materially here yet. And so sitting with that and being able to kind of backcast and kind of think about what are milestones, what are tiny actions that I can do. Maybe it's getting an informational interview with somebody that is doing a portfolio-based professional experience, or thinking about, I just saw dropped in like job descriptions of the future. What could a job description look like? I think for myself in terms of education, I need to continue to work in the system in order for me to fund the things that I get to play with. And so there is this kind of like, there is that dance of I'm still in this world, and there's so many communities that are on local levels that have alternative redistributive economies. There are a lot of different ways that redistributive wealth is taking place. And so there are, I think for me, it's kind of finding those possibility models to stay grounded in what's possible, and also navigate the transition, I guess, for oneself about like, where am I right now? And what are the pieces of this that I can live day to day with? And then what are the mini steps that I can take? And I just saw a message, but I'm with you on that. I dropped in the chat, my job is the joy of being right now. And that includes also, I do a live action role-playing game for myself, and I have an avatar that's like, yes, I'll do capitalism today. I have a certain pair of glasses that I wear when I do my capitalistic things, and I take them off and I play a different world. I live in a different world for most of my life. Yeah.
Do we have time for more stuff, Anissa, or what's the advice?
Go ahead. I mean, like, if people have to leave, they'll leave. And if you are willing to stay for it's go ahead and
Yeah. Okay. I just Sabine, you want to answer this question, or do you feel you already did? The I guess money, dollar, like capitalism question.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. So I hinted at this a little bit, right? So we've been in mostly like art project mode for a while. Like I guess there's a few layers to it. I guess personally, like I part of the reason I live in Kuala Lumpur is after living in places like Shanghai and Hong Kong and Singapore for a while, like moving to like a lower rent place, literally, like is good arbitrage, right? And like if you're an independent person, that basically means that you free up time. If you can do like I don't know, like a project that and your rent goes down by like 50%, you basically do half the projects and half your time comes back, right? So that's given me a lot of space over the past decade since I went independent to kind of explore a lot of like different things. I think some of the research inevitably has allowed different things to emerge. There's a kind of mode that Cpunk is in right now. It's kind of like this art project thing where we take on like people who have like free weekends and stuff can come and do these things together as an adventure, and I think people love it, but of course, like depending on where they are in their situations, not everybody has that liberty. We've thought a lot about like different kinds of models for things, right? I mean, obviously, if you're making valuable stuff, like it makes sense to get shares of it and stuff. I think there's a part of like what we do that I think of as public imagination, where we've never charged anybody to participate in a Cpunk event, and I'd like to keep it that way for as long as we can, right? But if we do make something that's very like interesting media and it's a smash hit of some sort and all that, then I believe that the people who contributed to it should have some shares in kind of like, I guess, like the spoils of that venture, right? Assuming it's all ethically done and stuff like that. And so they're kind of like maybe like media venture models that could come out on the side, I think, separate from the collective, but the collective always remains this kind of like family commons kind of thing. But selective ventures can have people going through it, and then they may get organized in much more kind of like commercial kinds of ways. And I don't have distaste for commerce in and of itself, right? I think it's the kind of like, it's the very like neoliberal, like blind kind of commerce that I think becomes very destructive. And then I think also like another thing we're thinking actively about, and like, like we're talking to some people who might support us in some projects so that might become viable this year, is like, I think the highest impact we can have if we had money is actually to like fund people at early career stages, right? Where to even get 3 months to focus on something for a while can become quite powerful. So we're looking at micro grants, micro fellowships for people in the kind of space, right? It's not going to be a full career. Like we don't have the luxury to like get beyond that precarity, but I think to buy some time to think about something you've been curious about is something we love to explore, and maybe some of our projects this year, next year can actually begin to create some of those kinds of spaces. So I don't have a big answer for it, right? But I think a lot of it's also kind of like creating small abundant spaces. And part of being in Southeast Asia is that there's a lot of arbitrage you can do about like having a month in a place that's low cost where you get a fund that usually supports. Like, so we did a project last year where our funder was so surprised at the cost of the dinners, right, that they bought 3 more dinners in that same week on the budget they had planned for dinner for the thing, right? And so like, you know, it's if what would have gone for like a 3-day workshop in many other places in the world could be like 2 weeks or sometimes a month if you're really like judicious about it, right? And like, you know, like for attentional work, that's crazy, right? That's a 5-10x multiplier sometimes in the quality of things you can create with that. So I guess digital nomads do this, right? They earn money in San Francisco and then they go live in like some low-cost place, right? I guess we're just like, you know, it's like the best money you can make is the money you don't have to spend in a way. So if we can find hacks around some of these things that kind of works, and I mean, it's I mean, that's like, do I feel good that like people have low value? Like, I mean, like some people are different economic standards, no, but it's, you know, like in some ways we try to be like win-win about it. And I guess that's kind of how we are stumbling through this question, if that's helpful for the asker, if you're still here. Okay, I know Roman has a hand up, and I don't have Sabine wants to respond to that first as well.
Well, I've been like freelancing for over 10 years now, and with the future-based platform, I never applied to any grants. We had a team of 5 people working, and I say working, so any revenue that we made from workshops or ticket sales, they went directly to the people working for future-based. I never made any money out of it directly. It wasn't my intention. So I'm not sure whether this is a good thing for future-based practices or for futures practice. But I wanted to create spaces where I could meet and discuss with people the topics that I was interested in, or the people that came to me were interested in. So I was always open for new ideas. And what I could do is facilitate. So I worked full-time next to future-based, and I often paid something to rent an avenue or rent a space. And then we could cover these costs with a small ticket sale or little donations. And all what was happening, a community developed, and through that community, assignments came in. And these assignments were from people that could afford paying for a workshop, asking us to organize a workshop, doing a podcast series. Some people that came to me said, I want to do something about witchcraft and science. Amazing. Let's organize 3 reading groups, 2 workshop sessions, and a podcast series. We did that, and they ended up in this career of witchcraft and science. A lot of hours of voluntary hours go in. I did all this on voluntary basis, but in the end, I got freelance assignments because of future-based. So I don't know, it overlaps. There's no business case. It's just, I love doing this. And that's also why at one point I said, I've learned enough, I did enough, I got this amazing community. Now it's time for me to move on to focusing on my PhD, for example. So I'm sorry, no business canvas model, but just chaotic passion. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got enough, and then you're flying to space.
No, I don't even like space. I like it here. Yeah.
We've got a pretty nice planet. We should try and keep it and like take care of it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I like the people working in space industry though. But
Cool.
yeah.
Romano, last question.
This isn't a question, and I'm so sorry, but Daniela, I feel like you've opened up this massive bag of, whether you want to call it worms or candies, I'm not sure. I have recently gone independent. I say recently, last year. thank the orange man for closing USAID, because that forced me to go independent, and now I am. I will say this. I will say that I think there is no one way to do independent or portfolio work. I will also say that it is probably more painful than it is joyous, but the joyous moments are so huge that they carry you through the pain. I'll probably also say that in the most practical advice I was ever given, have 6 months of savings in your bank account before you go, because you can run through it very quickly. But I think the last one I want to say is that I think that I was having a conversation last week with a futurist from Bangalore, who also works in London. She does independent work between the two cities, and she has her own organization. And she said something that's been sticking with me since then. She said, once you commit to the life, you have to commit to the life. And it's like, what does that actually mean? And for her, it was, okay, I've decided to go international and to do this international work. And that means accepting the limitations of my nationality. She was from India, she's South Asian, and she needed to figure out how to open the world for her. The limitations of her passport was real. And so she embarked on a process which opened up London for her. And now she committed to commit. She put everything on the table and figured out what she needed to do to get to where she wanted to be. Myself, I am South African, and I'm based in Bangkok. And if anybody ever asks me, Romano, where's home? I say, wherever I end up next. Because I'm committing to commit. And it is not easy and it is not fun, but it is rewarding. But yeah, I'm sorry if it isn't nice stuff. I think I may have leaned into the worms rather than the candies. But I think that you joke and you say that don't ever ask a futurist about their own future. But something that Sohail has taught me to do is to do CLAs on yourself. And it's actually very helpful. But yeah, I'll stop talking because I will not stop if I don't stop now.
Yeah. Can I share a comment on this, or are we out of time? Yeah. So like I was just helping to curate a design thinkers practitioners conference over the past weekend, right? And I think maybe in a parallel to like a lot of futures practitioners, right? Design thinking came of age about 10, 15 years ago, and kind of a golden moment where like every company was looking for it. And like part of what happened with that was that everyone started to associate this practice with this profession, a particular way of doing things and being paid for it, and that lifestyle. I think like there's a similar thing happening in like the space of like a lot of knowledge work and stuff, where like, consulting becomes this mode of doing it, right? And like there's the discipline and practice of doing futures, and there's particular models of monetizing, like I guess selling services for time or other kinds of forms. So like a lot of people who were doing selling time as design thinkers have then started their own companies or practices, gone in-house. There's a lot of different kinds of ways that has crystallized as well. And I feel like, you know, in any evolving practice, those chapters will come and different seasons come true. And it's useful to not get overly attached to a particular mode of how your services get hit the market or get exchanged for things, because like different circumstances demand different like postures and relationships.
Okay. Anybody else want to add on to that, or do you have anybody has a burning questions? Elias, would you like to say something or no? Let's say you gave me great inspiration to make up something on art-based adult learning using some help from Gen AI. Anybody else has burning questions you want to ask, raise your hands or just take the microphone. Well, in the meantime, I'm so glad 3 of you are here because this is exactly why I do the Future Studies channel. Basically creating a space where people can come and talk about their work and, you know, sharing their, maybe some of the tougher times. And, you know, we don't just celebrate our good times. We also, I think, talk about the stuff that we go through, what we do, and how we can maybe, like, you know, how can we move forward, move through something easier after talking to someone, knowing that we are not alone in the room. There's so much happening around us. Yeah. And yeah, this is precisely why why I started this was when I teach future studies, I realized there are a lot of things like, you know, it's not clear cut. There's no textbook telling you exactly how you teach certain things. What are the steps to do? What are the processes? Sabine, I'm so glad you talk about, you know, you are really interested in the processes of how people learn to do imagination. And in anything, like in terms of future studies, nobody really they have concepts, but how do you really get people engaged and, you know, understand something through doing? So that's why I started this, and I felt like there are a lot of people who, I think, a lot of people out there also doing this teaching and finding it, you know, sometimes we are doing this in the dark, then you'll be thinking, am I doing this right? Just like parenting, you don't know whether you're doing it right. You know, I'm still learning. My kids are 31 years old and 28 and 26. I'm like, am I doing this right? You know, constantly asking. Maybe we should have parents group too, you know, talk about all this stuff. Nobody has parents group. I want to cry. But anyway. Yeah. So so I don't see any question coming up. So if you guys want to make a quick, you know, closing statement, then we can. I don't want to take any more of your time. You've been so generous. I'm so grateful for you being here, so generous with your time, sharing your experience with everybody. Thank you so much. But I'll open the floor to you all to just say something to close up the session.
I just want to say a quick thanks to Anissa, and like if you're tracking like feedback and surveys and stuff like that, right? I think the liveness mode, if it's an experiment of a conscious thing, is especially wonderful because, you know, like everyone learns something and it's so much richer than the scripted things. Everyone can record something and play it at 2x speed online. We get so much of that these days, but the live mode, such a pleasure to like riff and reflect on these things together. So Makēda, Sabine, pleasure being here, and thanks all of you for being here with us as well in this circle.
Yeah, for me the same. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much both Makēda and Samuel for sharing your stories. I learned a lot, also for the interesting questions. Yeah, one final thing, keep your curiosity, keep feeding your curiosity. I think that's the main thing. Keep reading books that you never thought would be interesting, that kind of thing. Keep visiting theaters and keeping meeting real people. I think the real conversations are a counterbalance to the toxic online environments that we are creating. So yeah, I think it's a typical philosophical thing to end up with an ethical statement, but nonetheless.
Living up to your name, Sabine.
And yes, I also wanted to say thank you for the invitation, and also just the conversation. And I was thinking about the title with the cosmos, the shores, and the playgrounds, and I was like, oh, these are all invitations to imagine beyond what we are kind of inheriting a little bit. So I'm excited to